Stoked. So how about we get into it? What do you want to say?
Welcome to Double Diamond. First of all,
welcome to Double Diamond.
we should probably tell the people who we are.
We should tell people who we are, and then we'll get real loud for Arjun as well, who is very generous, lending his time with us, because I'll save the surprise for in a second. We'll come to that.
I don't remember what it is.
You know what the surprise is. They don't, but we know.
I'm going to go. So I'm Chase Goulet. I'm a product designer at an early stage AI fintech startup.
I'm John Falcone. I'm also a product designer at an early stage supply chain startup.
And yeah, so this is Double Diamonds. The whole idea here is we want to build a sort of curated space and curated community of designers and product thinkers who are going to push forward the craft and sort of the discipline of design, because we think that AI is really going to change, obviously software, but also how we interact with it. So we want to try and sit down with the leaders in this space who are really pushing forward what's UI for AI could look like and have interesting conversations with them. So really glad that you guys are all here.
Yeah. I'll just add to that, like, if you work in design or product, like a lot of us do, we're all having the same conversations with our friends, our colleagues behind the scenes. Like, what does everything mean? What is going on right now? What are our jobs going to look like? How do we build good stuff with AI? Like, how do we do that?
How do you manage context windows? How do you orchestrate agents?
All of that
What
stuff,
does any of that mean?
Whether we're self-starting and building with AI, or whether somebody above us is telling us, I need an AI product, and we're like, what the hell do I do?
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're all trying to figure it out. So we think conversation can help us all be a little better and learn from one another. Okay. Shout out to the sponsors. We'll start first with Framer. This is truly like, I love Framer. I think Val is here. So thank you, Val, and the Framer team. Chase and I are both Framer power users is a strong word.
We both built the marketing sites for our respective companies in Framer. Could not have done it without them. Huge advocate of Framer.
And a lot of what we're seeing tonight with the event itself is really courtesy of Framer. So if you are interested in building a really cool marketing site of your own,
we're big fans.
Ask us about Framer, or ask Valerie, who's here. And then 28th and Park, we have to give a shout to Sean, our production liaison and pro. 28th and Park is what allowed us to take this concept from like
idea to execution.
Idea to execution, 0 to 1, from an idea that we should do an event to, oh shit, we have a podcast. Like So thank you, 28th and Park. And now let's talk about.
So last note is we're trying to do this a little differently in terms of Q&A. Framer graciously provided all these notebooks, and there's a use for them. We want you guys to think about questions as we're giving our talk and Arjun's giving his demo. And if you have one that you're interested in, one of you can come up and take my seat and ask him directly. And we're going to record this whole thing, so we can send that out. You guys will have those clips. But we encourage you to think of questions while we're going on. And feel free to use the notebook, write them down, whatever you need. But we want to try and have this be somewhat of a discussion when we're in that Q&A session. So yeah, without further ado, we're going to introduce our guest for the night, Arjun Mahesh. Can we get a big round of applause?
Yeah, we need
Arjun?
a big.
One more.
Huge.
Thank you.
Awesome. So Arjun brings experience from nearly every type of design across a variety of different industries, working as at the studio of Frank Gehry, the architect, working from notable companies like BCG, Kickstarter, Stripe, working as the founding designer for the creative tooling app Verse, and I was the head of design at Hebbia, a generative AI company helping knowledge workers in firms like finance and beyond conduct deep research and garner rich insights across all their company's data. We're really excited to sit down with him and hear how he and his team are pioneering the future of intelligent interfaces.
Yeah, thanks for the intro. That was very kind.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Amazing. Yeah, let's get it going. I think I asked you to come up with a kind of hot take about design, just really get us going.
Let's rip it.
Quickly. What's the hot take you have for us?
I love switching it up on me and putting this first instead of last. Okay, so I thought about this. One of the hot takes is that I am not personally a huge fan of the market positioning of like AI analyst or AI researcher or like AI blank profession. I think it sells both people and AI a little bit short.
Let me ask you then, how do you, since we were also thinking about this, we're product people, so we can maybe understand like a more ambiguous framing for a product, how do you then explain to somebody who's not a product person what a thing is if you don't use that language?
Yeah, so I can go a little bit deeper on how I think about this. So in like specifically for Hebbia, for example, like we are AI for finance. So analysts do use our product most frequently, sometimes managing directors, and up. But what we find is that like what's an analyst at a financial firm? Like if I'm a large financial institution, my analyst is like my freshest, most junior talent that is the least expensive. So like to me, selling like, hey, well, you can replace your department of college grads is like not a huge value prop. Like what I think is like a lot more exciting and what we're excited about at Hebbia is like actually like it's really important to keep bringing on new talent, but rather than saying like, hey, we don't need people to do some sort of menial repetitive task, let's actually completely raise the floor and the bar of what those people are capable of. And not only that, but just like transform completely like what it means to have like proprietary knowledge and deploy that.
Mm-hmm. And so then how do you take all of that and package it up? Either, and there's a million ways you could do it, but like package it up in a way that somebody who isn't familiar with an agent, let's say, can understand.
Yeah, so a thing that a concept we've been sort of bouncing around a lot, and I think is very relevant for AI, is like this concept of inputs and outputs, and framing that like in the context of the person that's going to be like using the AI. So, when I joined Hebbia, like we used to think of Hebbia, we used to frame it as like, do you want to do research? Do you want to make a matrix? Or do you want to draft a report? And so we were framing it in terms of these outputs. And we found that ultimately, like, that's only like part of the puzzle. Like actually, like, what is it? Why would I make a matrix or a spreadsheet? Like nobody knows what that means, right? And so like what we've started doing and what maybe I'll like get into in a little bit in the demo is like, how do you frame it in terms of like, so I'm an analyst and like 2 or 3 times a week, like actually what I need to do is like prep meeting notes for a company I'm researching on with my MD so that they can go into their meetings prepared. And so rather than saying like, packaging an agent is now about, we tell you, you input a company name and we will output you the meeting notes. I'm using like one very narrow specific example, but I think it's like, I don't know if all AI companies do this, but like Hebbia has been growing a lot in terms of like moving from like a generalist kind of like research AI tool to like we are like really finance user focused and like framing it in like terms that they already understand.
Mm. Do you think there are specifics to the finance industry that make you have to talk about what you do in a certain way when it comes to automation or when it comes to
Absolutely. I think that's something we've also learned as we've matured as an org. Like George, our founder, is very mathematical. He's very meta. He's like, the founder archetype in many ways. And like for him, he sees everything is the same. Like what is a finance workflow? It's like you're reading thousands of documents, you're asking the same question over every document, and then using that like sort of subset of data to come to new insights, or like what we call alpha. Mm-hmm. That workflow is kind of fundamentally the same, not just in finance, but in legal or like insurance, risk. Like it's all the same actually in terms of workflow, but then the vocabulary is so different. How insights are applied are so different. Yeah. And so we've recently actually like focused in as a company. We used to be more generalist where we're like, hey, anyone can come do anything in Hebbia, which we still fundamentally believe to be true. But in terms of like actually going to market as a business, like, you got to start getting specifics. Otherwise people don't know what you're saying.
That's an interesting tension of like, are you trying to verticalize, or do you start small and then grow out to those other businesses? Do you foresee that like causing tech or design debt if you like start in finance, but then want to build out and continue to bring those other industries in? If you like, name button specific things, name object specific things that are only to finance. How are you thinking about that from a design perspective?
Sure. So it's interesting where right now we kind of have the opposite problem where
Sure.
like
Too general.
we're so general that like chat is just chat. You put in text, you get out text, and like it can't get too like sort of fine tuned. Like people have different kind of feelings on like whether chat is the right interface for AI or whatever. But like I think the reality is like that is here to stay. And even just within chat, like a generalist chat tool like your Chat GPT or Claude, it feels very different than like what's possible, like even with the Perplexity, which like if you ask Chat GPT how's Tesla doing, it'll just give you a few sentences versus Perplexity will give you like the ticker and like give you all this like very finance specific output even within just chat.
Yeah, something you mentioned when we spoke sort of offline is that chat is kind of table stakes now. Like that's expected in an AI product.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we fought it for a while. Like we
Having
were
a
like
chat interface.
primarily we're here to sell the grid. We're here to sell you power processing.
Sure.
Do analyze 100,000 docs in one click, and
Yeah.
people love that. But to even get to that level of like comfortable with AI, like everyone, at least what we're seeing in the market is that like chat is the place they start, and that we're sort of now seeing chat as like that entry point gateway drug into like crazier AI.
Sure. And then for the crazier AI, something I'm really interested in is like dynamic interfaces or like that exact example of it generating UI in the result. Maybe it gives you like a weather widget or like a stock ticker. Are you thinking about that?
A little bit. I mean, generally, at least with like where we are today, I think like you have to give it more of like a set component set to sort of pull from, which
Yeah.
I think probably is where most of us are at, especially in vertical where it's finance and like everything has to be trustworthy and
Right.
like things are expected to be presented in a certain format, and that's very important. So you can't just like kind of have AI wing it
Sure.
yet.
Yeah. I would love to know how you are managing that specifically, where you own the user experience if you're a designer, so you want things to look good and feel good, but you want the experience to be able to answer the question, is what you said to me. It's like you want Hebbia to be able to answer questions. There's many ways you can answer a question. How do you balance kind of codifying stuff, like having a component set on one side while just wanting the right answer to come up on the other side in whatever form that might take?
Yeah, so I think that's like a limitation and like a bridge that we're trying to cross actually like right now. So we have different you can do all kinds of different output types. Like you can draft we have slide generation, we have Microsoft Word generation, spreadsheet, matrix, like there's all these output types, but AI isn't quite good enough yet to sort of know exactly, like, for example, if I asked like, how is Tesla doing? Like I could make a big spreadsheet analysis of like all of Tesla's earnings call, or I might pull up a stock ticker chart. There's a million ways to answer like a open-ended question. And so right now, I think like the short-term solve is like, which none of us are satisfied with, is that we kind of have to offload some of that specificity to the user and say like, hey, like kind of specify the output. But that just adds so much friction, especially when people are coming in and their baseline for AI experiences is like OpenAI, ChatGPT, where there's like an entire team of people like optimizing the prompt box,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you think right now, kind of putting the burden on the user to specify what kind of output they want is the best of maybe like a not ideal set of approaches?
It's not ideal, and I think like this is where the testing process kind of comes in of like, how do you improve inference, for the model to pick the right outputs or even like retrieval processes to answer a certain question.
Yeah, I had a question sort of related to the quantity of data that Hebbia consumes. I saw you guys just posted today that either your product team or like the product itself has searched through 1 billion pages or like documents. So they could be like filings and research and web pages. When you have that quantity of data, how, from a design perspective, are you giving control to your users in terms of which data it consumes when you ask it a question, right? Is it searching all 1 billion pages every time?
Yeah.
How do you give control over like the types of documents?
Yeah. So you're getting into one of George's, like our founder's, like philosophical projects that like, I'll get into it. I think right now that is our core differentiator. Like power processing and accuracy at scale. Like usually what'll happen in many cases, like is that it'll start hallucinating, or like once you get past a certain number of documents, like the accuracy of extraction goes down. And so that's kind of what people are coming to Hebbia for. In terms of how people retrieve, there's this project that's kind of infamous at Hebbia, which is called diligence mode, which is basically like right now you can attach files, right? Which is like and even this is not well explained, even like in consumer chat interfaces, where it's like when you upload documents, it'll like there's like a really small limit. It's like usually 10 or 30, and it'll read all of them and answer it. But then if you flip on web, like you're not telling it where to look. It's just gonna go decide like which ones are relevant, read those, and then get back to you. So what's interesting is that another kind of differentiator for Hebbia is like customers come and upload like 2 terabytes of data in one shot into Hebbia, and then they want to chat over it. And it's like, actually the quality of the answer depends so much on like, do you want to just read the top 10? Do you want to read all of them?
Yeah.
And like a new user is not going to know the nuance of like read versus search. And like, so what diligence mode is like this thing we're working on, where it's like, how do you give people like extreme control for a power user, like which to read, which to search, and how to decide.
So is that sort of how you're solving that question of like, how do I explain this to them? Do you have 2 separate modes, like easy mode, diligence mode, or what's your philosophy on that?
Yeah, I think we're trying to find the right balance. I think what we tend to do is like, for someone to even understand that nuance, they have to be quite experienced.
Sure.
So I think our first stab is like, how do we give that person is going to want more controls. They're going to be like, I want you to reason this much, and then I want you to read this much. And so they might want like a totally different set of controls than say like a consumer who just wants like a read all button. Right.
Yep.
And then you kind of have to tell them, well, hey, to read 2 terabytes of data, it's going to take 2 days, and like it's going to cost you X, Y, Z. Right.
And are you approaching that like in terms of making different interfaces, or are you imagining that as like the same interface, just with different like toggles and progressive disclosure?
Yeah, we kind of, one of our reference point, I don't know if there's any like music producers here, but if you've used like Fruity Loops or like Ableton, and you've used VST, or if you've even seen like a DJ interface, like there's all the knobs. We kind of joke that like actually our dream product is just like a teenage engineering thing that you sit around and putz with. But
Incredible.
Yeah.
Because you like do some DJing on the side, right? So you're already familiar with like what that means.
Yeah. We love to pull from the.
Arjun's very cool.
Yeah.
That it's tough. Like this is what we want to talk about with this format is what is the balance? What is the right way to even think about it? And on the one hand, right, you want to let the users one shot it, I would imagine, right? One click, one input, one prompt, they get exactly what they're looking for. On the other hand, different users, depending on who they are, might want to have all of those knobs and controls. Yeah. What do you think it is, let's say, about Hebbia that leads you in one direction or another, whether it's Hebbia the company or a fintech context?
I think we're in the process of evolving this mindset. Historically, we were like let's solve the complexity thing. Let's give you the amount of controls. Like this is AI for power users. And I think now, as we are like kind of growing, trying to win more market share, we have to actually like be a little bit more like, all right, let's go back to basics. Like, how do you make this explainable and obvious for like the new user that's just graduated college and has like only used ChatGPT to like cheat on their homework.
Yeah. And is maybe familiar with consumer applications that are simpler, and that's like sort of expected of them.
Yeah.